Have you ever opened a global newspaper or looked at the TV and thought, perhaps we need some sort of better system of global collaboration or potentially even some beginnings of a global government? That's something we've been thinking about actually at MIT for quite a while. And what could be the potential basis of such a thing? So in order to dive into this, we go back to some clear, crisp German thinking. Peter Drucker. So Peter Drucker, born in Austria, moved to Hamburg, got his PhD in Frankfurt. He said, what can be measured can be managed. But how do we measure a whole planet in order to potentially manage a whole planet? We need something with a common metric system across all the different countries. We need something that's unbiased. What could that possibly be? What we do at Thasos is use mobile phone geolocation data from the entire planet Earth to answer questions like, what is consumption? What is industrial production? What is employment? And when we can measure it using a common system across every single country, now you have the basis for what Peter Drucker was talking about. So let me introduce a little bit Thasos. So we're a 6-year-old company spun out of the MIT Media Lab. All we do is source aggregate anonymized geolocation data from mobile phones. As everybody knows by now, your phone is spitting up a location data all the time. And we take this in very, very large amounts. And we try to use machine learning, AI, to discern the patterns in it, denoise it, normalize it so you can get clean signals for year-over-year measurements on whatever you want to measure anywhere in the world. And the products we have released right now are actually in the US, but we're planning a global rollout of it. So we make this software platform that runs in the cloud to take all of this anonymized location data in. We look at all the different places of interest, which we curate very, very carefully. And out of that, we can build indices. We can see trends and things like that. And I'm going to give you some examples. Right now, of course, all of this has to be monetized as well in a commercial way. It's not just for policymakers. We sell into primarily investors. For example, I'm going to show some examples that are products that the hedge funds use, but also real estate investors are quite keen on the things I'm going to show today. So first of all, we're a data analytics company. Everybody always says, yeah, thanks a lot, that's interesting. Can you just show me the data? So here's the data. You can see it's one number per day for a lot of stuff. So imagine one number per day and a spreadsheet that's 500,000 columns long. And we update one number per day for 500,000 things, which could be a ticker, retail traffic for a company, a cohort of behavior that you're trying to look at, hours worked in the factories owned by a particular manufacturer, anything like that. So let me give an example of what it looks like in the real world, products that people buy. This is one of our products called Mall Streams. Now, in the US, there's a lot of shopping malls, probably too many. In fact, the former CEO of JCPenney stated recently at the Dallas Fed that he thinks that only 25% of the current malls in the US will survive over the next 5 years. So that's a bold statement. Now, at the same time, there's companies like Simon Property Group that own malls. These are $50 billion market cap companies. And you know what all of this AI and technology is used for today? We simply don't even know how many people go to the mall. So for the first time ever, with almost 100% coverage of every single strip mall, enclosed mall, outdoor mall, every single mall by ticker on the property level, thousands of malls, we can tell people how many people are at the mall, how is that trending over time, who owns those malls, and if you're an investor in the US, there's mortgage-backed securities beneath each one of these properties, and people are keenly interested to assess the risk of where the high-income customer is going. Is this mall losing their loyal customer base? Which mall is attracting new customers? So we can see all that kind of stuff. This is a little what I talked about. I'm not going to go into it too much. I want to have the slide in here if anybody wants to download it. It's looking at new customers, existing customers, things that really key onto the health of a property. And all of this is normalized nicely in a year-over-year format that the financial markets like to receive. Another practical example is just looking at traffic to US retailers. So in order to monitor the traffic for these 140 publicly listed retailers, we have identified their 235,000 locations, and we've put a little geofence around it. And when we see this anonymized data appearing in there, we use our normalization models, and we figure out how is the traffic trending year over year. And normalizing it for year over year properly within a 1 or 2% year over year tolerance is extremely difficult. It uses the brightest minds in the world. But that said, I think it's a better use of the brightest minds in the world rather than doing targeting advertising. We don't do anything like that at all. So let's just give an example, right? So Amazon recently acquired Whole Foods. And now Whole Foods is no longer a public company. They don't report their traffic numbers. But everybody's curious, what's going on? So we can see that this dotted line vertical was the date that they announced price reductions at Whole Foods, so the first implementation of Amazon's strategy. So everyone wants to know what happened, right? The only way to know is this. So on the day of the price reduction, they got 30% more foot traffic. But then you can see it petered out, and a few weeks later, it was down to 0. But if you look at the most recent data, some very interesting things have happened, which I can't say yet because it's going to be published soon in a major publication. But also, let's go a little deeper. So, all right, Whole Foods, it seems like they picked up some traffic during this period, but what you want to know if you're an investor is, who are they hurting? So let's look at who they stole customers from. They stole in the first week, second week, third week, each bar here. You can see 6 to 8% of Trader Joe's customers. They stole 5 to 6% of Sprouts customers. Now we know for sure, and this information has never been available in the real world before, you can actually quantify over time the impact of this competitive environment. So another example quickly on mall REITs. These are big companies. We called out the top 5 worst performing REITs in terms of foot traffic loss over the last year. And while causation and correlation are certainly two different things, I'm just going to very quickly show that this is the stock price of the 5 that we called out to be the 5 worst. This is the change, and the red bars, arrows, are actually when you saw major drops in our data. And you can see the market didn't know that at that point. And then you can see the tremendous decline that happened. And the other bar in blue is actually when we made a public announcement about some of that information. So you can see there was an immediate drop on some of those. So these are multi-billion-dollar public companies. And there's just never been any information in the market about that ever before. So last but not least, going back to sort of the global level, and we have a partnership with Bloomberg that will be announced more details coming up in the next few weeks, doing a product together with them. But this is the stuff we can measure, right? Think about in every country in the world, you can measure how many people are going to work every day, estimate it, right? How many hours are worked in all the employment, in all the factories, on the assembly lines. Looking at everything from, how many trucks are on the road, how many people are eating at restaurants, and when this can be looked at in a standardized way across all these countries, we start to have the basis for having information that you can use to manage these things on a global basis, which is where we're going with it. So we're a private company based in New York City. We do have an open financing round right now that we're working on, which we don't disclose too much publicly about. The company is funded by prominent folks from the hedge fund industry. But if that's something you'd be interested to talk about, you can reach me on LinkedIn. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Wonderful.
Cheers.